saw that.
I was walking up and I saw stuff all in the back of it. Well, it's wonderful to see you back on this Wednesday evening. If you would, please stand and sing with us, Only a Sinner. Not have I got 10, but what I received, grace hath bestowed it since I have believed. Boasting excluded, pride I abase, I'm only a sinner, saved by grace. Only a sinner, saved by grace. Only a sinner, saved by grace. This is my story, to God be the glory. I'm only a sinner, saved by grace. Wonderful singing, please remain standing.
All right, good to see all of you on this great Wednesday night, and it's a little sparse in here tonight, and I realize that, but there's a couple reasons for that. First of all the kids are going out to the field to do their Water Wars games, and there are a bunch of people over there helping with that, so praise God for that, and that's a wonderful, exciting thing. And Awana's, of course, launches next month, a little bit more about that later. And then everybody else who intends to be here for the midweek service is going to come tomorrow night. But joke's on them, because everybody else got the memo. So anyway, but it's good to have a good start to the Connection class year. And Joshua showed up with a fresh haircut for it. Like he was ready, and so he did a good job leading that opening song too. And so let's have a word of prayer as we get started, and we'll have some announcements. And then Joshua will bring his fresh haircut back up here It looks like Jacob got a fresh haircut too. These guys are looking sharp, Scott. So let's have a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Father, we're grateful to gather together here in your house on this Wednesday evening, and thank you for the beginning of this connection class season. Ask your blessing on the classes this year, that they would continue to grow and multiply, and that there would be an increased number of disciples here on the Treasure Coast as a result of the work that you do through us here at Bible Baptist Church. And we ask that your blessing would rest upon each of us as we learn this evening. I ask you to bless each teacher, that you would, your hand of anointing would be upon them as they teach. And Lord, your purpose would be accomplished in each of our hearts through the teaching of your word tonight. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated for just a moment, and I'll share with you some upcoming events. Just a few things. This coming Sunday evening, there'll be a financial team meeting after the evening service. Anyone has some questions about the finances or any of that, you're welcome to attend, and I'll be glad to answer any of the questions that you have there. Next Wednesday night, we'll be launching Awana, which I skipped over one thing. This coming Sunday morning, we're having our Back to Church Mania. And you say, what's Back to Church Mania? Well, it's an excuse for us to get all the kids back to church. And we use it as a tool to invite the kids from Vacation Bible School back. And they'll be doing they'll have their regular lesson in junior church time. And after that, there'll be some bounce houses on the backfield. And then we're going to give them all the leftover snacks from VBS. So that's what we're doing this coming Sunday. And that'll be happening. Basically, parents will be able to just pick their kids up from the field and enjoy some fellowship together at the conclusion of the service this coming Sunday, and that'll be a wonderful, albeit probably a very hot event, but I'm sure everybody will have a good time. And then Awanas, of course, will be launching next Wednesday evening. So those are the major announcements for some upcoming events. One thing you'll be getting in your bulletin this coming Sunday is invitations to Friend Day. And Friend Day is a wonderful opportunity to make new friends and keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. Anybody know that? and you have the opportunity to invite them out for Friend Day. Friend Day is going to be September 18th for the Sunday morning service. And Brother John Lands, who is on staff at Pensacola Christian College, but for many years was the pastor of the Fellowship Baptist Church up in Washington. West Virginia. There's definitely a difference. And up in West Virginia. And he'll be preaching for us, and I know that'll be a tremendous blessing for you to be able to invite some friends out, and we'll have a special service on that day. Well, let's stand together. We're going to sing our song, Count Your Blessings, Name Them One by One, and after that, we'll be dismissed to our adult Bible classes. There are 3 of them that are available. There's mine, the young adult Bible class, and then Miss Mandy's ladies class, and then Brother Will's class will be meeting right here in the auditorium. Those are the 3 adult classes that are available, and then, of course, the teens and children are already out on the field. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Brother Joshua, come and lead us in this happy hymn.
When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, and name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Wonderful singing, you may be dismissed.
All right, am I on? I think so. I want you to know I was listening back there in the sound booth of Pastor complimenting these young men on their haircuts, and I got to thinking that, I give myself a haircut about once every 3 to 4 weeks, and at the same time, that's about the only time I ever shave. And it's disappointing now because I pretty much cut more hair off my face than I do off my head. But, what are you going to do? Save it? No, it never grows that long. I mean, I've really thought about, hey, maybe I'll try the comb over, but, no, I'm okay with that. So, no, my wife already is like, no. I think she was the first one who yelled at me. So, you said, you're the first one who said no. So that's all good. All right, we're in the book of Luke chapter 2, if you want to open up there. Luke chapter 2. Luke 2. All right, so before we broke for Thriving Thursdays, pardon me if I cough, I just deal with phlegm. I have for years. We started into just kind of a series on the words of Christ, just based on a conversation I had with a guy who bought something off of me from Facebook, which is really kind of interesting, how that all turned around. And we took about 4 weeks. We looked at some things in the Old Testament of places where God spoke to some people, and I believe that in what he was saying to them, he was doing it in his role of Jesus the Christ, not God the Father. Because when we have our mindset what God the Father is like. We think of, God the Father as righteous judge, right? Justice. We think of Christ as the Savior, which usually we think of more grace and mercy, don't we? When we do. So I think sometimes when I read that, I've always believed that the Trinity is not anything for God's benefit. The Trinity is for our benefit, to try and understand better the roles of God if anybody can tell you that they fully understand the concept of one God in 3 parts, I would hate to say I disagree with them. I don't think we as humans have that capability to fully get it. But I've always just put it in my mind as God uses those 3 persons for us. So there are certain times in the Old Testament when God spoke to specific people that I think that as you read it, that it's Christ, God in the role of Jesus the Christ, speaking to them, an Old Testament Christophany, I believe is what they called it, rather than God the Father speaking. So I told you guys back then, for those of you who are with me, when we came back after Thriving Thursdays, we'd hit the New Testament, right? So we're going to go ahead and start in Luke chapter 2, and we are going to go to verse 42. That's right, we're going to start with a road trip. How many of you guys like road trips? You like road trips? Not so much anymore. All right. No, it's okay. This is what I remember growing up, all right? When I was younger, my brother's about 2.5 years older than me. My sister is about 7-ish years younger than me, okay, just under 7. I remember loaded up in the station wagon just outside of Detroit, and we're hitting south on the I-75. And we're going to stay on that I-75 until we hit Wildwood, at which point we are going to get on the Florida Turnpike until such time as we hit Deerfield Beach, Florida. My dad did not believe when you did road trips that you ever stopped at a hotel. It did not matter. My dad, we are driving, the speed limit was a little bit less that back then. I think, back in the day it was 55, arrive alive, all that kind of good stuff, instead of, the 70 that we have nowadays. And boy, those were some long trips. I do not know how my parents put up with us, because 3 of us in the back, it didn't matter whether we had the seat up and we're sitting there and, one was laying in the back, or we just laid it down so we could all try to go to sleep. Never worked. All I know is holy cow, did we fight. And we did it all with no seatbelts. That is correct. By today's standards, y'all going to jail, right? That's what I remember more than anything else about a road trip. Wait a second. It's 1,300 from my parents' house to my house. So add in an extra. So let's say 1,400 miles. Non-stop. And I'm not joking. Some of you will get this reference back old school. The McDonald's cup was more than just for drinking your beverage out of. Some of you guys get that. Just saying. So, As we enter into verse 42, I want you to think about this. It says here in verse 42, and when he was 12 years old, we're talking about Jesus. Now, I won't even begin to say what I think about the life of Christ from the time that you finished verse 41, which is right at the end of verse 41, you're talking, basically Jesus is born, they took him to the temple. We had what happened with Anna and, I lost the gentleman's name. Who was the other one in the temple? Simon? Simeon. Okay, sorry, my bad. We have a really large gap of not really knowing much. But what do you think those years were like for Jesus? And it's an honest question because I think it does go in a little bit for this week. And depending upon how time goes, I'm not always good at judging that. It might be next week too. This might be a two-parter. All right. What do you think? Oh, he had brothers and sisters. He was just the oldest. This is what I learned about the oldest. The oldest gets away with everything. The middle child gets punished for everything. And then the baby gets away with everything again. That's why I'm the only one who turned out right. I'm a middle child. That's my joke. So, no, I mean, seriously, what do you think? Give me a thought. What do you think life was like for, toddler Jesus?
I think it was harder on his siblings.
Harder on his siblings than on him. He didn't sin. Okay. I'm not to that point yet, but I'll go ahead and throw this out. I told you guys, I'm a teacher, not a preacher. So I do a lot of studying. I read a lot of other people's stuff. I mash it all together, and it comes out a lot of my own spin, right? I read something one guy wrote, and we'll get to it when we get to verse 49, 48. And this guy actually wrote, I don't think Jesus meant to disobey his mom. And I went, what, excuse me? Pardon me, time out. Do you realize in your statement, now, whether it was meant or not, in your statement, you just denied the deity of Christ. Whether he meant it or not, if he disobeyed his parents, that is a sin. So I agree with you. What would it be like? I mean, I'm sure, pastors' children, perfect kids, right? Yes. I mean, I know because I married a pastor's child. And I'm sure my wife was, absolutely perfect. She is now, so I mean, why not then too? Yeah, all right. I'm trying, get myself out of some hole I'm pretty sure I dug many, many, many days ago. But to sit here and think that, I mean, did Jesus cry as a baby? So now you ask yourself, is crying a sin? Is crying a sin? Well, no, what for a baby, crying is the only way they have to communicate, right? I mean, it's not like baby Jesus could go, hey, Mary, I'm hungry. I mean, you can't do that. But unfortunately, we do understand, and I remember this. Oh, here I go, telling a story on my daughter, My daughter was about, I'm going to say she was less than one. My wife remembers this story. She was in her crib. She wanted me to pick her up. It was bedtime, and she was crying. And I came in, and I did it almost reflexively, and I just looked at her, I went, say please. And she flopped down and started crying. And she's sticking up her arm, screaming for me to hold her, and I looked at her and went, say please. And she wouldn't do it. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not picking you up unless you say. And you think about, that's such a small request, isn't it? Say please. Which she could do. Now, granted, it was peas, I mean, close enough. I mean, the little green things, why not? You realize it was 45 minutes of her screaming. I don't think that was crying because she was hungry, because she was, dirty, or what else? I don't know what else. You know what I'm saying. She wants affection. She was mad. And I will say that day I won that battle. And when she did it, I made her do it like 3 times before I picked her up. All right, you say please pick her up. I said, now when I say, she just kept doing it. So that was good. But I don't think Jesus did that. I don't think Jesus had an issue of playing ball in the house like Peter Brady and breaking a vase. For those of you old enough to remember that reference as well. Some of you guys probably aren't. And I agree with you. I think it was really hard on his siblings. You realize that they could never blame anything on Jesus? I mean, I don't really know how Mary and Joseph dealt with it. Do you believe that Mary and Joseph knew that Jesus was the Son of God? Knew what it was. Okay, but do you think they really knew. You understand I said it a different way, right? There's a connotation there. You know, there's a difference between saying I know a fact and I truly understand a fact.
Kind of like us, knowing that God is our Father, but
Do we really fully understand how all that works? Just like the Trinity.
the disciples knew Jesus was the Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
But after Jesus came to them walking on the water and stilled the waves, they fell at his feet and said, truly, this is the Son of God.
Sure.
You know, there was an increase of their depth of their understanding of exactly who they're dealing with.
And many times Jesus did have to go to or said to the disciples privately, how is it, I understand why they don't understand. How is it that you have been with me and you don't understand? I sit here and look at it that Mary and Joseph, and I think sometimes we don't give Joseph enough credit. Mary and Joseph were told by an angel what was going to happen. Mary, what was going to happen to her being the mother of the Christ. Joseph being told, this is of God, do not put her away privately. You have that right, don't. You know, and Joseph having to be the equivalent of an earthly stepfather. You know, how would you like to be the mom and dad of Jesus Christ as a little child? How many mistakes do you make as a parent?
How would you like to be the brother and sisters?
I think it would be worse to be the mom and dad. At least the brothers and sisters, you expect that. I mean, you know, I can tell you how many fights my brother and I got into. I mean, the fastest way to knock out a loose tooth was to go wrestling. You know what I'm saying? And we would do it. And sometimes we'd get mad. My sister and I, you know, we'd get into it, even though I was, 7 years older. I was not always a good big brother. You know what I'm saying?
They were probably saying to the other children, you should be like,
Oh, I'm sure. But you see, that's what I'm saying. That's where the parent part comes in. Can you imagine his parents going, why can't you be more like him? Have you ever, I mean, now, we only had one child, so we never had that issue. We've never had to look at our daughter and say, why can't you be more like, oh, wait. You know, we don't have that. How would it have been like for Mary and Joseph to sit here and, as parents, knowing their imperfections and knowing that he has done? But I also want to throw it into one other thing. Put yourself, no, we can't put ourselves in that, but just think about it for a moment, about what God did when he took the form of a human. You know, if you go to the end of verse 52, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, eventually I will get to why I have a quote up there that we'll get to. It says, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature. Did you guys ever think that Jesus had to limit his knowledge? Now we could say Jesus didn't have to learn anything. He knew everything. No, I disagree with you. Jesus took the limitations of a human form. Could you imagine being Mary teaching Jesus how to read Hebrew? Teaching Jesus how to write. And I don't think Jesus ever looked and went, you pronounced that wrong. You know what? You could make that jot or tittle just a little bit better. That's Hebrew, isn't it? The jot and the tittle. I'm just checking because I make mistakes up here sometimes. You get my point. See, I got two pastors in here. I'm really nervous tonight. I got them both. I got them on both sides of the auditorium, man. It's like I getting evaluated at school, and not only does Mr. Ader walk in, but Miss Popwell walks in too. And next thing I know, here's Dan Frank. I got all three of them. That's my boss's boss. You get the point. So just makes me nervous. But, I mean, he took that upon himself to learn. Now, would I say that Jesus would have qualified today as what we would call a prodigy? I would have to say yes. I mean, how old was Mozart and Beethoven, those guys, when they wrote like their first symphonies? I mean, they were like, yeah. I mean, we're talking preteens, I mean, and the stuff that they put out. And you could say that with, they make movies about, little kids who are mathematical geniuses at the age of 6 and 7, all that kind of stuff. You can imagine that Jesus learned very quick, but God took that limitation. All right, so I just want to keep us all in mind of where we're at as we're going to this, okay? So you get a lot of backstory because I think you have to be thinking about these things when you do. And then we get to verse 42, it says, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. Now, if we're talking here about it was the Passover feast that they were going to. If you go back through Jewish law, that was one of the 3 feasts they were supposed to go to Jerusalem for. There were some exceptions. It was more, if I remember correct, it was a requirement for the men, wasn't necessarily for women and children. If you were too old, couldn't make the journey, that was okay. If you were too far away, I mean, there's only so far you could go. How far was Nazareth? I want to say Nazareth was about 70 miles from Jerusalem. Am I correct? I'm just asking if I'm right. I think it's that. I mean, it's not, but I want you to think about a 70-mile journey. How long did it take to walk? Now, maybe you had a few horses carrying some stuff, okay, or mules. I don't know if they had horses. You know, and I was talking with Hayden about this over when we were eating because he was asking me about tonight. Although little kids didn't have to go, I personally think that Mary and Joseph made some serious sacrifices. We know that Mary and Joseph were not rich people based on their offering when Christ was born. I think they sacrificed their trip to Disney World so that they could make sure that Jesus, even as a lad when he didn't have to, was at the feast that mattered. Because they understood, and again, this is what I believe, that they understood that it was important knowing that they had God's Holy Son to make sure that he was at those events and not going down the log flume at Thunder Rapids or whatever. I don't know. Huh? I don't know that I believe Mary went every time. Bible doesn't specifically. It does say that, what they did, it seemed like it was, a custom. They might have brought them along. They might have left them with family. The one thing we do know is from reading on, and most of us know the narrative, so that's why I'm not always reading everything. We know they went in a caravan. It wasn't just that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, and, if they brought along the little ones, I mean, could you imagine going 70 miles carrying Erica? How we doing? May I ask? I just met, I love it, Will. I got another Will here. I just met Will and Erica the other night, so I'm working on my name recognition. How old's the little one? A year and a half. 70 miles, walking, pulling a mule with your stuff, with a bunch of people from your hometown, all together. 70 miles. How long do you think that trip would take you? 70 miles walking with a 1.5-year-old. I mean, good night. Let's just go ahead and say, how long would it take you with a 12-year-old? 6-year-old? Anything.
Just average 20 miles a day. That'd be real.
In the region that they were. We live in Florida. I call it flatland, right? I mean, the highest mountain we got is the trash dump. That's all we got. But I mean, that region over there, they're not just walking straight. They're walking up, down, and it's not like the roads were paved. Yeah, winding, trying to get through. I mean, you can imagine that this was probably minimum a week-long trek. Camping out, campfire, and by the way, why does it make sense they went as a caravan anyways? Well, I can think of numerous reasons. Protection. I mean, the more people you got, you're going to hope that, some people laugh at me. I keep my outdoor light on every single night. I have Christmas lights in my window that are still on, that have not been turned off in 4 years. All right? I keep a lamp on in my living room every night. It's on 24/7, actually. I never turn it off. And you know why? Because I figure if some burglar is going to hit a house on my street, they're going to go for the one that's dark first before they're going to go for the one that's got several lights. Would you not agree? Go for the one that no lights are on. Well, it makes sense. Men love darkness because their deeds are evil. It all makes sense. So protection is good. Number 2, as a parent, don't you want backup? Aren't you just hoping, well, maybe there's a couple that doesn't have kids yet and they can maybe just help? Maybe there's a Miss Eileen whose kids are grown and out that,
I know a guy in church who'll pick up a baby all day long.
There you go. You're not looking at me, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not even. So, I mean, but you can think about, how about cooking? You sit here and think, we go over here and, okay, I'm a very picky eater. I mean, if you guys all enjoyed the tacos, yes? Okay. I had a vegetarian taco because to me, taco meat should be hamburger and Taco Bell seasoning packet. That's it. There shouldn't be anything else in it. All right. So, I had a nice vegetarian, which is good. I'm trying to lose weight, so it's all fine. And, but wouldn't it be nice to have some help cooking? So here they are, they're packing everything up, and they're going because it's important to go. Right? Now, if you were going on this trek, you think you would probably double check, is everybody here? Now, before they left, I kind of almost imagine it like, the Home Alone movie, the first one. You got somebody walking around going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they accidentally count 5 for the kid who wasn't supposed to, you know what I'm talking about. You can imagine that happening. So here's what it says. Let's just keep reading. It says, and when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, it says, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. Now, I'm curious, how many of you would leave your kids behind? On purpose. Yeah, hopefully not on purpose. How many did they have? If they brought his brothers and sisters, I don't remember the number. I know he had a couple brothers and sisters, I think, according to what it says in the Bible. I don't remember the verse or anything, but I know he had siblings. Yes. It was, but can I also throw one other thing out? In this particular narrative, how old is Christ? 12. So what does that mean as far as Jewish custom? You know, I know that we, today, and that doesn't mean how everything is, but in the Jewish tradition, they celebrate a bar mitzvah, which literally means son of the commandment, which means that child has now become a man in the eyes of the law. You are now responsible for you. I mean, I don't want to sound bad, but as a 12-year-old, had Jesus shown himself pretty responsible? So if you were to ask me what I said at the beginning about the guy and his, whatever, telling me that I don't think Jesus meant to disobey, I don't think Mary and Joseph ever once said to him, okay, guys, we're leaving on this. I don't know if they took it for granted. I don't know. I mean, I would probably think, he's such a nice boy. I know this family over here he's probably over there helping. And I think they just assumed that Jesus was with them.
When our son was 12, we borrowed a church to use their baptistry on a Sunday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
There was like 30, 40 people after the baptism. And our son was friends with one particular family. And when we went to he wasn't in the car. There was no cars left in the parking lot. He didn't say anything to us. So he probably got in with Tim Small. So we left. We drove halfway home, went to a convenience store, and here's Small's car at this convenience store. They're picking up milk, too.
And he wasn't there.
I said, you got paid? No. Guess what?
Yeah.
We left them behind.
Well, and there's any number of reasons that it doesn't mean I think that they were bad parents. Every year, especially, I don't know why it seemed like it was up in Michigan, but every year I remember that there would always be some time when some parent left their kid locked in a hot car all day long. They forgot to drop him off at daycare that day. And I mean, there were many times when, unfortunately, you've got a kid strapped in a car seat for 6 hours in the middle of summer. That child doesn't make it because, I mean, the inside of a car can get to 130 degrees in not as much time as you think. We are human. Jesus was not. And they left. But I want you to think about this for a moment. If I could just throw out an interesting spiritual application, can I? Jesus didn't leave. Well, I hope so. We try to get that. We do a little bit of it, just not a lot. Jesus didn't leave them. They left Jesus. I want you to think about it for a moment. Many times we get into just a spiritual routine, don't we? Today was the first day teachers reported back to work. So today was the first day my alarm went off at 5:15. So I am now into my school routine, which is instead of going to bed at midnight and getting up at, 7, now I'm going to bed at 11 and getting up at 5. That's kind of my routine. I'm getting myself into a routine. When I was growing up, I don't think I'm lying when I say this. There was one time that my brother had to go to work and I had to drive him. I was like 16, 17 years old. I remember waking up in the parking lot of Janos, and I do not remember driving there. I swear I drove there in my sleep. It was like at 4:30 in the morning or something like that. Have you ever run on autopilot to the point where you're supposed to drive somewhere, but you get to a turn and you just turn by habit, and the next thing you know, you're boom, just... I did it the other day just going out of my street. We live on that P-shaped street where there's only one way out. I come out, I make a right turn, and I went, I was supposed to go left. It's just habit. I come out, I go right. That's just what I do. And if we're not careful, what do? Let me ask you a question. They didn't leave him on purpose, right? Did they think Jesus was with him? Was he? But whose fault was it? Was that Jesus' fault? It was Mom and Dad's fault. They didn't do some wild, wicked sin that, oh my goodness, we fell so far away from the Lord. It's just, we just got into our everyday routine. And as we get into our everyday routine, if we're not careful, next thing you know, we're leaving and we left Jesus behind. You know, we come to church on Sunday, and if we're not careful, when we leave church on Sunday, Jesus is still there going, hello? And that's not on him. That's on us. That if we're not careful, that just in our normal everyday grind, and again, we're not talking about people who, you know, we say backslide so horribly. I'm just talking about, I throw it out as this. This is what I've always said, and I think any Christian probably would say that they've struggled with this at some point, some of us more than others. Did I just go out? Okay, I'm good. I call it being an Ephesus Christian. All right, if you go back to the book of Revelation, Ephesus was chastised not because they didn't do good works. It was because they lost their first love, and that is why do you go to church? Because a good Christian is supposed to go to church. Hello? You with me? Not because they love Jesus. And if you're not careful, we can have that happen with us as Christians, yes? We can lose that first love, and the next thing you know, Jesus isn't walking with us, but not because Jesus left us, because we left him. And we just don't even realize that. Notice what it says, and here's where it says, and supposing them to have been in the company, they thought Jesus, by the way, you notice that? They thought Jesus was with them. Isn't it a sad thing that sometimes we think Jesus is with us and really he's not? Because we've left him. They went a day's journey. Now, I can tell you right now, nothing I want to hear out of my dad when we were traveling is, don't make me turn this car around. Don't make me stop this car. That was the other one. Seems like my whole life I've had cars with problems. I remember driving home from Pensacola to, north of Detroit, and I remember my car breaking down. And my dad told me, he says, if you don't make it past the Ohio River, I'm not coming to get you. One time, twice it broke down. Once was in Toledo. That's not bad. That's only like 60, 70 miles. One time I broke down. I can tell you it was exit 110 on the I-75 in Ohio. Keep in mind that Ohio goes up to about exit 213. Yes, it's a shame, I know this. My parents would be off of about exit 62 on the I-75 in Michigan. So yeah, you do the math about how far away I was. But at least I had crossed the Ohio River, so I was okay. Nobody wants to turn around and go back, especially when you're walking. And then it gets worse. It says, and when they found him not, they turned again to go to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after how many days? 3 days they spent looking for Jesus. Now, at the time frame, population of Jerusalem, what, 20, 30,000 people? It's not like it was a thriving metropolis like Port St. Lucie or Fort Pierce, There weren't hundreds of thousands of people there. I was sitting there thinking about it, 20, 30,000 people. The University of Michigan football stadium holds over 100,000. That's only one person for every 5 seats. They looked for him for 3 days. By the way, where's the first place you'd look? I'm just curious. Where would you go? You would think, but I don't think that's where I would go if I was looking for a 12-year-old kid. Ice cream stand. Disney World, yeah. No, it's seriously, 3 days. It's been 3 days, plus the extra day to get back. They went a day's journey, had to go a day back, and then it says 3 days. You can put this on. It was a long time. Police station. We're going to the local magistrate, yes? Seeing what's going on. They searched for him for 3 days. Now, I don't know about you. Do you think you'd be freaking out a little bit? How long was Nate away from you when you said that happened?
Oh, it wasn't a half an hour.
Half an hour.
The thing is, we didn't blame him, we blamed ourselves.
Right.
We should have had him in the car. We should have known where he was.
Gotcha.
And he didn't do anything wrong. He was just exploring the building.
My parents, when I was really little, okay, so this is before my sister was just, my parents would take us camping. That's what we would do. And I mean, I don't know why. I don't like any of that stuff nowadays. I mean, please don't take me outside. I need air conditioning. My parents, and it's not a joke, they tied me to the trailer. They had a long rope, and they would tie me to, my dad has slides, not pictures, but slides of these things. And he tied me to the trailer because I just had to go look at stuff. Did you ever have your kid do that in Walmart? And you're sitting here looking all over, and tell me that even just for a minute, it freaks you out. Even more so today than I think it makes me wonder how when I was a kid, we'd go outside and play for hours on end, ride our bikes, 3 miles away from the house, and our parents we didn't have a cell phone, we didn't have, low jack on the bike, we, didn't have, GPS for our parents to ping us or something. They just assumed that, 6 hours, yeah, can I make sure you're home for dinner, that's all that matters. You're okay, but today, I'm pretty sure they were a little bit worried. And this is what it says, okay? And it came to pass that after 3 days, they found him in the temple. So let's go back to spiritual application for a moment. So we do like those. Did you ever think about the fact that we look for Jesus in the wrong places many times? We look for Jesus where we think he should be instead of where he is. You know what I'm saying? Why would, I often wonder this, for 3 days, where did Jesus sleep? Did you ever think about that? What did Jesus do for food? I like to think that there were people there who said, oh, you're by yourself today? Where's your parents? Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, you need something to eat? Come on. We'll go to Chick-fil-A, because I'm pretty sure there was a Chick-fil-A in Jerusalem back then. Got to be. Where did he sleep? I don't know, outside.
Well, it's a lot of travelers slept outdoors.
Sure, all you had really is just a roll.
They let them sleep in a barn.
Yeah.
Something like that, and they didn't have Motel 6, leaving the light on for you.
Yeah.
You get hospitality locally, and if Jesus went there year after year, he might have made a friend or two when he was in town.
Right.
He stayed with them.
But for all those days, he's in the temple. There are people who look for Jesus in nature. There are people who look for Jesus in an experience. I know I believe in Jesus because I went out and then there was this big, huge, giant rainbow and sunset, and that's what just told me that there was a Jesus. I'm not saying you can't see Jesus in nature, but I don't think that's how God's going to reveal himself to you. That's not where you're going to find Jesus. If we're not careful, we don't look for Jesus where we need to look for Jesus. I remember back in the past, this is 20-some years ago. I remember talking to a guy who said, I'll never go to church. I just have church on my own, sitting out here on a stump looking at the sunset. And I'm sitting here going, I'm not saying you can't worship God in nature. I'm not saying that if, you're up in the mountains of Tennessee that you can't sit out on the porch and admire God's handiwork. But you know what? You really want to find Jesus? This is where we need to find him. And when they got there, I will say this for Mary and Joseph. I can tell you right now that if I were a parent and my daughter was 12 years old and I lost her for 3 days, I would hug her first and then we're going outside. Just because I'll be happy and then I'll be really mad. Mostly because of how much gas I just spent turning around looking for you. That's anyways. And it says this, that he was sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them. By the way, this is what tells us about Jesus, and asking them questions. He was having a conversation with Bible scholars, Old Testament scholars who knew, these are the learned men of the day here in Jerusalem around the temple. And he's carrying on conversation, and these men are going, wow. It's amazing his insight. It says so because it tells us, and all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. Now, in verse 48 it says, and when they saw him, they were amazed. Why were they amazed? Because at least they had enough common sense to stop and see what was happening. Could you imagine what it would have been like if they had walked into the temple, like probably we would have done, walked up to Jesus, grabbed him by the ear, yanked it up, and started walking him out in front of all of these learned scholars? They were amazed at what happened. And here is what Mary says, I believe, when he stepped out to talk to him. She said, Son, why hast thou dealt with us. Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. So if you ask me the question, do I think Mary and Joseph knew who Jesus was? I'm going to say yes. But if you ask me, do I think Mary and Joseph fully knew who Jesus was? I'm going to say no. Because if they fully understood that this is God incarnate, would they have been worried about him? I'm not saying that they shouldn't do their job as a parent. They were doing everything they should as a parent. But they should understand what it was. Now, here's where we get to. What I got? I don't know. What time is it? Yeah, that one doesn't always work, so I checked. 7:42. Okay, I'm good on time. So now we get to what Christ says. And I just want to look at the first one. And he says unto them, how is it that ye sought me? I'm going to put it for us today. Are you ready? Why are you looking for me? Jesus asked the question, why are you looking for me? Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my morning today, okay? So went to school. We had an hour to work in our rooms, did some personal professional development that we're all required to do on our own. Then we had a big professional development with, the new superintendent did a live stream from one of the schools. He had a bunch of the teachers from a couple of the schools close by, live streamed it to all the other, 30-some schools in the district. And we watched it. Very interesting. And he said some things, as far as our focus and, what we need to be doing with our students this year. And it was really good. And then Miss Popwell got up, and she was talking about what our theme at Centennial was going to be. And when I first heard it, it was like, okay, it sounds kind of a little to me. But when she started talking, it was like, did you know what I was going to be talking about in church tonight? I was really wondering. Because the question is, what's your why? What's your why? Why do you do what you do? She asked the question, why are you here? Why did you come back this? We had 26 new staff and teachers to this morning. 26. Does that tell you how many we lost last year? And I can tell you right now, I had people at Centennial that I know, they quit because they finally just said, after all this COVID, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't. You see, they lost their why. Now, I'm going to share what Miss Popwell said because I think hers fits. She said back in 2000, she says, do you know what my why was when I walked into my first classroom? She says, my very first job was as a BIC monitor. That's basically in-school suspension at Port St. Lucie High. She says, my why is I went there to be the girls' basketball coach. I didn't go there to teach. I went to be a girls' basketball coach. She says 6 years later, my why changed because I had a principal who was mentoring me and eventually getting me into administration. And then my why became about, the kids. She ended up over at Centennial 8 years later, and she made us stand up. She says, how many of you were here when I became principal? She told the story about how she became principal. The year my Miss Popple became principal, she was slated to go to Treasure Coast. I'm sorry, that's a Centennial reaction. She was slated to go to Treasure Coast as an assistant principal to get more experience. We were having her going away party in the middle of the summer. There was about 30. And she gets a call from the superintendent and said, so many of your teachers have called because our principal at the time quit at the last moment. And so many of them have reached out in the past couple of days. I want you to stay there and be the principal. And she said, my why switched. She said, my why for being here every day is you. And then she talked about how, I think the year was 2018 for our school. Her mom had a massive stroke, and she had a year where she was back and forth at home just as much as she was here at school. Our staff, I think we had 4 different staff members had an immediate family member die. One of them, I want to say the husband was 51 years old, died of a heart attack with no clue that it was going to happen. It was a hard year. She said that one was tough. And then, she said, this year my why is all of you. We're coming back out of COVID. She says, I'm here for you. And then she looked at us and she said, what's your why for being here? And as a teacher, that's hard. I know, I get emotional because I love what I do. And I was sitting here thinking, why do I do this? When I started teaching, why do I teach? You want to know what my answer was? If I go all the way back to 1990, 1991? That's a long time ago. 1991. I teach because I'm good at math and science, and I'll be a bad engineer. That was literally my reasoning. I'm going to be a bad engineer. I'm not that, I mean, I like science. I'm not that good. I'm not that precise, but I'm just good at math and science. I'll be a math science teacher. Yeah, I can do that. And at some point, it does turn into, why do you teach? Well, duh, I teach because I need money because I got to support a wife and a kid. But as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I got Hugh sitting next to me. You know, the Groover son. He was a student of mine over at Faith. When did he graduate? What year? Do you remember what year he graduated high school? 2005. So 2005, this is 2022. So we're talking, what, 17 years ago? He teaches beside me. I still can't get him to call me Will. Don't know if he ever will. Yeah, a lot of people do after that point. But it really comes down, and again, I'm not talking about teaching here, but I think it fits. I teach because I want kids to be successful in life, not just mathematics. I know that nobody's ever going to come up and ask these kids, hey, excuse me, can you help me find X? Nobody's asking them to use the Pythagorean theorem in the grocery store. Now, there's other reasons why we learn the math. But if I can teach these kids skills beyond just math and physics and chemistry and all this other stuff, I'm trying to impact their life. Nothing means more than when they come back and they tell me that, you know, you were a help to me. You know, you're the reason I like science, or things like that. And I got thinking about all that this morning in relation to this verse. Why is it that she sought me? Why do we search out Jesus? What's our why? You know? Is it just because, well, mommy and daddy went to church, so I'm going to go to church too? Guess what ends up happening in those situations? Does that last long? You know what? There was a whole group of a caravan going back and forth, right? You can go with the flow. I was a Christian school teacher and principal long enough that there were a lot of kids who knew the motions and knew the words of what to say. You know what I mean? Their why for Christ was nothing more than, well, everybody else is doing this, so I guess I got to conform. You know? Sometimes our why just fits what I said about being an Ephesus Christian. We know what God is, but we get to points in our life where sometimes we're just going through the motions. My why is just because, and I've been there in my life. Those of you who know, you've heard me talk about it, that there are times in my life when it's just been, the only reason I'm going to church is because a good Christian is supposed to go to church. I wasn't going to church because I was getting anything out of it. I wasn't going to church because I could sit here and say, love Jesus today. I'm going to church because I'm afraid of what other people are going to think if I don't go. You know? And that's a bad place to be. And praise God when you can realize that as a Christian. Amen. You know what I'm saying? And Jesus, and I understand that some of you guys might be thinking, well, I think you're taking this one phrase out of context a little. Maybe only a little. But when he looks at Mary and Joseph and he says, why is it that you sought me? Why are you? I wonder if there isn't a part that Jesus in his own way is saying, do you really know who I am? You know, it had to have been so hard for Mary and Joseph to look at Jesus as their son, but then to turn around and understand that he was also their Messiah. And I think maybe this is one of those moments that Jesus was trying to get them to fully understand. Yes, I'm 12 years old. But do you really understand? Why are you seeking me? You know? When you understand the why, it makes such a difference. All right? I don't know if I can do this. You can yell at me if you want. I'm going to try it. Miss Popwell played a video. I'm not going to try and play the video. I just want to play the audio for just this one part of it, okay? So, Brother Ken, if this doesn't feedback, just we're going to try and do it, okay? This is just about it's no more than 2 minutes. It's okay. You don't need the video. You just need the audio, okay? I just want you to listen to it and think about it, okay?
So you're a musical director? Yes, sir. All right, so let me get a couple bars.
That's your okay?
Like, Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch
Pretty, isn't it?
like me. Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. Amazing grace.
Same guy, by the way.
How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
I can't sing that. Now you know why I'm playing the audio.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it.
You get the message? What am I doing? I'm going to church. What am I doing? I'm reading my Bible. What am I doing? I'm praying. But the question that Christ asks here in this verse is why? Why are you looking for me? Why is it that you sought me? We need to make sure that we understand why it is that we're searching to be with Christ. You know, why are we looking for him? Not just because, it's not about what, it's about why. When you know, did you hear the difference in that? I mean, don't tell me that it's a different song. You know what I'm saying? And I think as Christians, we need to make sure that we get back to understanding the why. Why is it that we're serving God? Why is it that we're coming to church? Why is it that we're reading our Bible? Why is it that we're praying? Why is it that you sought me? Which is what Christ is asking. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for your love to us in the study that we're taking. And Lord, I pray that you just help it to be something profitable for somebody in here tonight, Lord. I pray that you just bless us as we go on our way. Keep us safe. In Jesus' name, amen.